Exclusively on the Oysterling podcast, the fastest growing hospitality job platform in the US, Eric San Pedro tells the story of founding Palm Beach Meats, a Wagyu focused butcher shop and restaurant born from a single bite at a Vegas wedding. Eric went from delivering beef from his car to earning a Michelin Bib Gourmand along the way. Hello, Eric. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you. All good. So, to start, could you please introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about your career path.
Okay. My name is Eric San Pedro. I am the owner of Palm Beach Meats, and this business it's a restaurant slash retail butcher shop, but it's much more than that. We specialize in Wagyu beef. In the day to day, we have an all Wagyu retail butcher shop, Australian, Japanese, little bit of domestic Wagyu. And then we also have an all Wagyu fast casual menu, which is kind of a fun way and an approachable way for people to experience the world's finest beef. The career path, it's a longer story and I won't bore you with it, but this is not, hospitality is not really my background. I spent the better part of my life working in the field of mental health and substance abuse counseling. And my wife and I accidentally discovered Wagyu at a wedding in Vegas, and it sort of paved the road to what has been a very, very wild adventure.
How good was that Wagyu that you discovered during that wedding?
Obviously, it was life changing. This is not anything that we had dreamt of. My wife was a financial advisor. I was a substance abuse mental health counselor. We went to a wedding. We both grew up in a world where USDA prime beef was as good as it gets. And, we're not really steakhouse people. I grew up also in a world where my father, it's not that we didn't dine out. It's that I grew up in a household where my dad would say, you don't need a Michelin chef to cook a steak. So you'd go to a butcher shop, buy, a prime cut of meat, cook it at home. We don't pay people to do something we can do at home. So we go to this wedding in Vegas. Everybody has this platter of Japanese Wagyu, and both my wife and I look at each other and express that we've never had anything like this. We had no idea at that moment that the course of history was going to change, but that beef was life changing.
I have a question here. It means you have no formal culinary education or butcher training or whatsoever. How did you get into that industry and build all that success? How did this happen?
So
Can you tell me more about this?
in the short version is this is how we can afford to support the habit. But, fast forward after the wedding, um, to our son was born in 2016. We had gone from this wedding in Vegas, and we live in Florida. We kind of wrote that experience off as something that only happens in Vegas. Florida doesn't get food like this. Never really thought about it again until May of 2016. Our son was born in April. It was our first Mother's Day, and I decided that I would get my wife the best piece of meat that I could find. And that's when, my thought process was, what was the stuff that we had in Vegas? And I started to look for it, couldn't find it, didn't actually get it on that Mother's Day. But within a few weeks, I had connected with some sources on the West Coast, and they started, I started buying Wagyu just for us to eat. And, this turns into a conversation of, really my wife said, we can't, she loves it, but she's like, can't really afford to eat Wagyu like this. And this is how we can afford it. What started as, you know, being told we can't do something. I figured out little ways that we could do it. I started connecting different people with different meat sources and getting discounts and saving money here and there. I started doing this so much that, I was working 60, 70 hours a week already in my career. I had a baby, and I would do this while everyone was asleep. So essentially I was just all night long, connecting people with meat sources. And eventually I was doing it so much that, our guys on the West Coast just started sending us free product all the time. And then the conversation turned into, again, inspired by my wife. She said, you're not particularly thrilled with your career at this point. You love Wagyu. You spend so much time, connecting people and talking about Wagyu. You should find a way to make this your career. And again, at that moment, we would not have dreamt of what was to come, but that's how that shift occurred. We went from there to talking to an old friend who had some successful businesses, and I didn't really know anything about even starting a business. And now, mind you, this is 2020 when this happens. And I talked to an old friend, and we, he had never had Wagyu. I said, hey, you got to talk to my guy, in LA, and we get him some Wagyu. And he says, hey, we got to bring this to Florida. We have to sell this product. So we set a meeting for our families to get together to discuss a business strategy, make some concrete plans. And that was March of 2020. This is no lie. COVID hit Florida the day of the meeting. We met
Gosh. Oh
we
my
met
God.
his wife in a Walgreens parking lot. We had brought in $1,000 worth of meat. We gave them $500 worth, and we said, "Hey, let's revisit in 2 weeks, 3 weeks when this COVID thing is over." Again, no one would have imagined that the world would shut down. 3 weeks later, it was worse. By June of 2020, we decided to pivot. We did not open a brick and mortar. We ended up, doing home deliveries from Vero Beach to Miami every Saturday. And little did we know, the pandemic for us was a blessing in disguise. We were able to open a business with very little overhead. We didn't have a brick and mortar, so we didn't have rent. We basically started the business with some friends on the West Coast who, at that time the world had shut down. Japan, Australia, all of the world's, Wagyu producers didn't stop producing beef, but they had no place to put it. So we were able to establish relationships with, some of the biggest importers and distributors in the country who would sell us, say, one steak or 1,000 at the same price, because for them, keeping people in their jobs was important, and keeping the production of beef moving forward. Obviously we didn't single-handedly save the Wagyu industry, but people like us were able to sort of find a space in a market where generally they sell by the pallet. We had friends with a USDA processor, so we didn't really even need a place to cut meat. We had an Instagram account, we had cars, and every Tuesday night I would text people and say, hey, we're doing pre-orders. Wednesday I would submit it to California. Thursday they'd process it. Friday it goes on a plane. We pick it up in Fort Lauderdale. Saturday we get in our cars and we go from Vero to Miami and spend all day delivering meat. And again, the blessing of also people who had money to dine out had nowhere to spend it. Everybody became a home cook. We were able to establish connections with a lot of chefs because a lot of chefs had moved out of the kitchen into the private cooking. And, we actually ended up bringing a chef on our team. Again, having no idea how the stars were kind of aligning for us, we brought a chef on our team for no other reason, but we needed help. And he needed, a little extra cash. And it wasn't to develop a menu. It wasn't to cook anything. It was, hey, do you have a car? Are you willing to drive, 10 hours every Saturday? Sure. This is the position. We also connected with a lot of different people, learned a lot. We did this for a year. And that's where the concept of Palm Beach Meats really developed was, one, accidentally we had a chef on our team. We had we never had to sit on inventory, so there were no losses. I pre-ordered. I never ordered more than we needed. We were able to establish a brand with very little overhead. And we met a lot of amazing people along the way. And an old butcher had actually told me, hey, listen, wherever you cut meat, you should have the ability to cook meat, because you're dealing with a very expensive perishable. Whatever you don't move is a loss. So what do you do with it? So we knew when we were looking for a place, a brick and mortar, we needed a kitchen. Now we have a chef on our team. We have an idea that we need a kitchen. And, we also were establishing a customer base, right? Without putting a whole lot of money up to do this. So when we opened, really our first, and the project has always evolved. When we started, the concept of food, turning this Wagyu into food, really was just about mitigating losses. We 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 only served lunch Saturday and Sunday. The menu changed every weekend based off of what was in the case. Then again, seeing, being able to kind of test things was really a blessing, of the pandemic for us. But we started to see people showing up for lunch. And we would do different things. I had a guy come in. We did a Philly cheesesteak one day, and nothing was really conventional. It was shaved Wagyu, piquillo peppers, caramelized onions, Swiss cheese, and truffle aioli with real black truffles. We had a guy from Philly tell me, "Hey, Eric, this is the best cheesesteak I've ever had." So, I said, "Jeff, you come here every Saturday. We'll leave this on the menu for you." And the cheesesteak is still on the menu to this day. The burger still on the menu because, his friend, they were barbers, Nick, he liked the burger. And I said, "You guys come every Saturday. We'll just keep these on the menu." Those are our two top sellers to this day. And, the other thing that it did was, using Jeff and Nick, who were two barbers from up the street, they never had Wagyu before. And they loved this. So what we realized, what this does, in addition to just, zero waste and mitigating losses, this also opens a dialogue about this product. Well, let me tell you why this cheesesteak is so great. It's not just because our team in the kitchen is so strong. They are, but it's a cheat code. We're using the world's greatest beef. Now, would you know, Jeff and Nick, they're still friends of ours. They don't just buy cheesesteaks and burgers. We've now opened a door into a world of Wagyu for them. And I don't want to call it a gateway drug because we're never in the business of, tricking people out of their money. But once people have, and because we have strong relationships and we work directly with importers, on our retail and our kitchen, we're able to kind of keep the prices relatively low. I say relatively because there's always people out there that just don't really know the value of Wagyu, and they're going to say we priced them out. And I totally understand that. But for the most part, I think we have something on our menu for $12.99, and it has Wagyu in it. And most of our sandwiches, it's all mostly handhelds, casual food, and most of it's under, say, $25. And what we're able to do is introduce people to something. If they just walk in and they see the meat case and they see, the prices, there's going to be some sticker shock. But if they taste it in a way that they understand, it's the same for myself. If you would have told me, you know, before the wedding in Vegas, hey, you'd spend over $100 on a piece of raw meat, I'd have told you were insane. But today, we're Kobe certified. We bring in stuff that is over $300 a pound, and I'm a believer. I'm a convert, if you will. So for us, that food also gave us a way to open a dialogue, and it also opened the door for everyday people to enjoy something that they might not otherwise get to enjoy. And then, as we move forward, we realized that we had a lot of customers who, they love to cook Wagyu, but on a Tuesday for lunch, they may not want to cook. So consider it like a complimentary service to our customers. The concept has always been evolving. It still evolves to this day, but that's kind of the story of how we went from not being in this industry to diving head first. The it's it's a journey, but it all stems from passion. We love it.
You know, I love how you brought the whole culture thing. So for those who were not with you at the wedding, you brought the wedding to them.
Exactly.
You brought the whole culture of Wagyu to them so they can experience what you
Exactly.
experienced. And as based on what you're saying, people started liking it, and you're educating people about this kind of food.
Yep. Absolutely.
Let me ask you, I mean, now you have the place, you have the location, which attracts people. But back then, when you started delivering, how did you build your first customer base? How did people hear about you?
So back then, not that this is like 100 years ago, social media was more friendly than it is today. There was less about algorithms.
I
It was
agree.
if someone followed you, they
Yes.
got to see your whatever information you were putting out there. And I would say by and large, we grew this business on Instagram. We had a website, we had a Facebook, we had Instagram, but in 2020 it was all Instagram to this day. And I still run our Instagram account, and we have two locations now. We're working on another two, actually, that those will be just retail. We're running an offsite kitchen. We do a lot of different things. We're now doing wholesale, nationwide. When I still run the social media accounts, and the reason that I run it is not because I'm so good at it. It definitely has character. I'm 45 years old, did not grow up in a world with social media. But the reason why I continue to run it is we still receive orders from chefs for thousands of dollars worth of beef through a DM. You can't hand that off to somebody. We're not there to where I found somebody who will respond to these DMs. And even our customers, they know that I'm on the other side, and they DM. And really, what I lack in skills in the kitchen, I believe my job is people. And aside from the food, one of the things that Palm Beach Meats is, we used to say we're not a restaurant, we're not a butcher shop, we're not a market. This concept is community, and it's about bringing people together with food as the common denominator. And that I don't want to get too sidetracked, but that's, again, learning from doing home deliveries. We did a delivery from a billionaire's house, and this is a true story, and the next stop was the dump. And what we realized was everybody eats, most people like to eat, and everybody deserves to eat well. That's the foundation of what we do. And because I'm not a chef. I'm not a chef. I can cook a steak, but we have good friends who take care of that for us, and we stay very well fed. They love to cook. We love to eat. You know, um, but what I can bring to the table, and where this business really thrives, and social media doesn't is a little bit one dimensional, is that I know, and having started in home deliveries and delivering to people's houses, for me to say on Instagram through a DM, I'm going to show up at your house, we have to build a rapport. You have to trust that I'm not, some scary guy. I might look like a scary guy, but at the end of the day, the first 300 customers, I know them by name. I know their dogs. I know their children. Being that we started this in 2020, we've watched a lot of people kind of grow with us. We're in the business of people. So that's the other reason, that if we're in the middle of service and it can be very busy, and someone sends a DM and they're like, "Hey, do you have, Japanese Wagyu blank in the case today?" Most of our customers would attest they get an answer within 15 minutes. And I believe as long as I can do it, I can physically do it, I will do it. I believe we owe it to our customers. We're not selling an inexpensive product, so we have to be there. And it doesn't matter about the price of the product, but I just believe that we built this business one person at a time. Every customer, we say this, it's very hokey, but the team is myself, my son, who is now 9, and my wife, and we have a very strong chef BJ Wright, who's really a ride or die with us as well. But that's 4 people doing all these different things. I believe that we're a family business, and again, we're not this huge corporation, so it's our mission to make people feel like they're coming into our home. It's a family business. we spend more time in the four walls of our business than we do at home. When we hire people, we let them know. My son used to sleep on the floor when we were building this place with our hands, chasing the clock, trying to get, the doors open. My son had a blanket, pillows there. He cooks. He cooks on the line. He's now homeschooled, 9 years old, works with Chef BJ. He runs Fry Station a couple days a week. Loves it. But people are coming into our home, whether it be our Instagram account or a DM, or they're actually physically walking into the building, or whether, we're in Orlando. We moved to Orlando. We opened our second location here, December of 2024. But we go back and forth from here, from Orlando to West Palm, our original location. And we tell everybody, especially in West Palm, I can't walk into the building without seeing people that we've known for many years. And whether we're physically standing up front, we let our staff know, when you join this team, you are part of our family. And the job really is filling those shoes of making people feel like they're coming into our home. A lot of these people in West Palm are really part of our family. Like they've been with us through the whole thing, from the home deliveries in 2020 to, last year. We're at a Michelin ceremony. We got a Bib Gourmand for our location in West Palm. Again, it's a wild ride, but a lot of our I don't even want to call them customers, because it's not transactional. This is, again, for me, we're not chasing dollars, we're chasing dreams. And like I said, we're in the business of people. We truly view everything we do. We built this one customer at a time. And like I said, having built these relationships over the years, no matter how many locations we open, it's our goal to make people feel like when they come in, they're stepping into our home.
Eric, I have done probably hundreds of interviews, but let me tell you, you like cracked the code of success when you say that you met personally your first 300 customers. You delivered to them, you met them. I've never heard anyone saying something like that, and it's impressive.
It's
I'm
all
I'm impressed
accidental. It's
because
it's it's all very serendipitous. We didn't plan it this way. It could have been very different,
yes,
but the way that our journey works, and I'm not a religious person. I'm not overly spiritual, but there, a lot of the things that have happened in our journey, I can't say are anything shy of a miracle. Like, if I made a left turn here, this wouldn't have happened. And we're walking into 2026 is already been a huge year for us. And again, I don't define success by financial terms. We last year going just really taking a step back and going, selling Wagyu out of the trunk of your car to being in a Michelin ceremony is nothing shy of a miracle. We partnered on a concept that just opened in New York City, called the Wagyu Room, partnered with Sushi by Boo. We opened that concept in February. These are things that, when I was sitting at a wedding in Vegas, wasn't a dream. The way that these things happen is wild to me, but it's all kind of accidental. It's about being in the right place at the right time. When
yes.
I have defining moments where I'm loading a box of beef into a car on a Friday night. And, we were still working at our jobs, and thinking to myself, like, man, how does this ever turn into something more than this? I can't see the path, but I have to believe that it's possible. And that is really like how this has all happened, between, accidents and serendipitous events and miracles. I don't know how you would define it, but meeting 300 people was an accident. And getting to know them, it's a wonderful accident. And like I said, these have become our friends. These have become our family members, and the journey continues. And it's hard. It's very hard. Every day I think, oh man, I could do something else and not work 1,000,000 hours a day. I can make more money doing X, Y, and Z. But if we take a step back and look at, if from 2020 to today we were able to accomplish this, I believe that, I mean, it's as hokey as it sounds, the sky is the limit for us. And as long as
Yeah.
the stars keep aligning for us, this journey is just going to get better.
Impressive. Let me wrap up this
Sure.
conversation with one question. When did you realize you have to start building a brand? Because now you have Palm Beach Meats. When did this, let's say, delivery business, family business that you and Megan started, at one point you had to turn into building a brand? How did that happen? How did you realize it's now the time to build a brand and, keep scaling?
So like I said, everything is accidental, right? I never really thought of brand building. We had a logo. I kind of understood, this is our brand. We had ourselves when I ran the front by myself for the first year. I was the brand. But I'll tell you, we did an event one day and a person came up to me and he said to me something, you can never unhear things that people say. At least I can't. He said something to me that I would never forget, and it kind of drives me. And this is where this is an evolution. This journey is always changing. I never thought, going from home deliveries to our brick and mortar, we could have lived and died in those four walls of our shop in West Palm. There's a guy who came to me, not a very we weren't very close. He comes in sometimes and he said to me, I believe in this brand. He said, what I see for you is 25 locations up and down the East Coast in the next 10 years, and then you retire. And I'm not going to lie, as much as I love this is, again, something that I never really considered, the silly business that we started in the pandemic, pulling boxes out of cars and delivering meat to people's houses. I never even really thought of this as something that I could retire on. I don't really talk to this guy much anymore. I might see him here and there, but he altered the course of history for us. We That's when we said, "Oh, we should go into the Orlando market." And again, through a series of the stars aligning, Orlando is again, it's just myself, my wife, Chef BJ, my son. But we moving into the next chapter have some partners who have expressed interest in helping us scale this. And but it started with somebody saying that to me. And that's when I realized, we can do more with this. And the brand is something to really lean into, because somebody else told me they believed in it before I had even really thought of it. I did believe in it because this is the faith that kept us going. Like, let's keep doing this, but I never really thought of it in those terms.
Amazing. Thank you so much for, I don't know, I would call it inspiration or this formula of success that you shared today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I'm amazed by everything, and I wish you all the best. Hopefully, for those 25 branches that
Yeah, we'll
you're
see.
going to retire after. Yes.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you, Eric.
All right.